Above the Rhine, Germany, 14th in the February 1945, 14:30 hours. The air was thin and cold, a sterile, sun-blasted void at 28,000 feet. Flight Lieutenant Kim Blue Anderson's knuckles were white inside his gloves, his grip tight on the spade grip of his Spitfire MK-15. "Eyes sharp, Blue Section," he rasped into his oxygen mask, the words muffled by the constant, hammering roar of the Griffin engine in front of him. "They're late for their own party." Below, a sprawling carpet of white clouds hid the shattered earth of the Reich. Above him, his four-plane section of No. 453 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force, scanned the impossible blue. They were the top cover, the shepherds for a flock of Lancaster bombers heading home from Osnabrück. The bombers were safe, lumbering dots already disappearing to the west. This was the dangerous part, the withdrawal. "Bandits! Bandits! 6 o'clock high! 2 of them!" Blue's head snapped back. His neck screamed in protest. There, 2 silver darts, impossibly high, impossibly fast. They weren't diving. They were descending, casual, arrogant, trailing thin, perfect white plumes of condensation. Me-262s, the Schwalbe, the Swallow. "Tally-ho!" Blue yelled, braking hard left and pulling his nose up. "Blue leader engaging! All aircraft, break and climb! Climb!" It was a useless order. He firewalled the throttle and the big Griffin bellowed, the airframe shuddering as the propeller bit at the thin air. He was giving it everything. Beside him, his wingman, Wombat Riley, was doing the same. The 2 jets didn't even seem to notice. They sliced through the Australian formation at over 550 miles per hour, 100-mile-per-hour faster than Blue could ever hope to go. The sound was alien, not the angry snarl of a piston engine, but a high-pitched, tearing hiss. "They're through us! Going for the heavies!" Blue watched, helpless, as the jets leveled off and accelerated, walking away from his Spitfire as if it were tethered to a post. The gap widened instantly. 1,000 yards, 2,000 yards. "No, you bastards," he whispered. The 262s were now specks, but he saw the winking flashes from their noses. They were firing their 30mm cannons. Far in the distance, a Lancaster, already 5 miles clear, simply came apart. A wing sheared off, and the great black bomber began a slow, terrible cartwheel toward the clouds. No parachutes. "Damn it! Damn it!" Blue slammed his fist against the cockpit's canopy. The 262s completed their pass, and then they did the thing that truly broke the pilots' hearts. They didn't turn to fight. They didn't dive away. They climbed. The 2 German pilots pulled their sticks back, and their aircraft pointed their noses at the stratosphere and simply left. They ascended at a rate that defied physics, shrinking to tiny dots, their contrails vertical daggers in the sky. Blue's Spitfire, its engine screaming at the red line, its nose pointed 40 degrees up, felt like it was sinking. He was climbing at his maximum rate, 4,800 feet per minute, and he was being left behind like a cart horse chasing a racehorse. He hung there for a moment, suspended between anger and awe. Then, his engine coughing in the thin air, he nosed over, defeated. "Blue leader to all call signs. RTB, returning to base." The flight back to Volkel Airfield in the Netherlands was silent. Blue's radio was filled only with the sound of his own breathing. He landed his aircraft hard, the tires barking on the wet steel planking. He taxied to his dispersal, shut down the engine, and sat in the sudden, ringing quiet. His ground crew chief, leading aircraftman Lachlan Mackenzie, unstrapped him. Blue pulled off his helmet and oxygen mask, his face slick with sweat and frozen tears of frustration. "See him, sir?" Lockie asked, his voice a low, rural Australian drawl. Blue just looked at him, his eyes haunted. "We didn't see them, Lockie. They performed for us. Then they left, and they took another Lanx with them." He swung himself out of the cockpit and dropped to the ground. He kicked the Spitfire's landing gear, a useless gesture of rage. "This thing, this magnificent, beautiful thing," he spat, "is a bloody museum piece." Volkel Air Base, B-80, Netherlands, 15th of February 1945, 080 hours. The morning briefing was held in a Nissen hut that smelled of damp earth, stale cigarette smoke, and simmering dread. The rain hammering on the corrugated tin roof was so loud that Squadron Leader Davies had to shout. "All right, settle down." The wing commander was on the line all night. Bomber Command is displeased. Davies, a career RAF officer, looked like he hadn't slept. He jabbed a finger at a map of Northwest Europe. "This," he said, "is our problem. WW2 7, Nowotny. They're based here, here, and here." He tapped airfields deep inside Germany. "And they are flying the Messerschmitt 262 in squadron strength. Intelligence calls it a wonder weapon. We call it a bloody nightmare." He paused, letting the implications sink in. The men in the room, pilots, most barely 22 years old, knew the statistics. The 262 was untouchable. Its Jumo 004 jet engines, while unreliable, gave it a performance envelope that no propeller-driven aircraft could match. "It's not just the speed, gentlemen," Davies continued, his voice grim. "It's the tactics. They won't dogfight. Why would they? They hit the bombers from astern, where the 50s can't deflect enough to hit them. They're too fast. Then they climb away, reform, and do it again. Our job, our only job right now, is to stop them." A pilot in the back, Magpie Smith, spoke up. "How, sir? We can't catch them in a dive. We sure as hell can't catch them in a climb. By the time we even see them, they're already gone." "That's the new doctrine," Davies said, pointing to a new set of orders. "We're initiating RAT patrols. Rocket-ass target. It's a lovely name. We will no longer wait for them to come to us. We will orbit their known airfields at 30,000 feet. We catch them when they're slow, on takeoff or on landing. It's the only time they're vulnerable." A low murmur of discontent filled the room. "It's ghastly work," Davies admitted. "It's loitering. It's boring. And if you miss your window, you've got a swarm of them on your tail and you won't get home. The Yanks are trying it with their Mustangs, and they're taking losses. But it's all we have." Blue Anderson stared at the map. Loitering over a heavily defended German jet base. It felt less like a tactic and more like trolling a nest of crocodiles. "The core of it," Davies said, his voice dropping, "is that this is a new kind of war. It's a war of energy, not of turning circles. They have all the energy. We fly Spitfires. Wonderful, agile, powerful, piston-engine Spitfires. The Griffin 65 is a miracle of engineering, but it is the peak of an old technology. The jets are the future. Our job is to make sure that future doesn't arrive for another few months." He looked around the room, meeting their eyes. "We have absolute air superiority, except for the 50-mile-wide, 40,000-foot-high box where they are. In that box, we are the prey. Dismissed." The pilots filed out into the rain, the mood black. The jet-shaped problem wasn't just technical, it was psychological. For 5 years, the Spitfire had been the queen of the skies. Now it was a target. Volkel Air Base, B-80, 22nd of February 1945, 17:10 hours. It took exactly 1 week for the RAT patrols to fail. The sky over Rhine Airfield was a hornet's nest of flak. The 80-meter and 105-meter guns were radar-guided, and the air at 15,000 feet was a popcorn field of black puffs. "Blue section, watch the flak! They're tracking us!" Blue yelled, jinking his Spitfire hard. "Where are they? I don't see anything." Wombat's voice was tight. "Keep your eyes on the runway, Wombat. They'll be slow." For 45 minutes, they orbited, burning precious fuel, dodging black smoke. The tension was unbearable. Every cloud looked like a bandit. Every glint of light was a threat. Then, the trap sprung. "Bandits! 10 o'clock! Below us!" 4 Focke-Wulf 190 D9s, the long-nosed Doris, had used the flak as a screen and climbed up underneath them. They weren't jets, but they were deadly. "Break! Break! Defensive circle!" The sky, empty a second before, was now a kaleidoscope of high-speed violence. Blue found himself locked in a head-on pass with Adora, both planes firing. Tracers streamed past his canopy like red rain. He broke low, the G-force stapling him to his seat, his vision graying. He came out of the dive and looked for Wombat. "Blue 2! Wombat, where are you?" I'm hit. He's on my tail. I can't..." The transmission ended in a burst of static. Blue twisted his neck and saw it. Wombat's Spitfire, 2,000 feet below, was trailing a thick, oily rope of black smoke. Adora was glued to its tail, methodically hammering it with 20mm cannon shells. "I'm coming, Wombat!" Blue roared, nosing over and diving, but he was too late. He watched, screaming in his mask, as Wombat's port wing folded up. The Spitfire snapped into an uncontrollable spin, a fiery pinwheel. It disappeared into the clouds, and a few seconds later, the overcast glowed a dull, sickening orange. "Blue leader, Wombat's gone," his wingman reported, his voice hollow. The Doras, their job done, dived for the protection of their own flak. The patrol was a disaster. They had orbited for an hour, seen no jets, and lost a man to 10-year-old technology. That night, the mess hall was a morgue. Blue Anderson sat staring into a cup of metallic-tasting tea. "It's a joke," Magpie Smith slurred, already half drunk. "We're bait, that's all. We float around till the Doras get us, and if the Doras don't, the jets do." "Shut up, Magpie," Blue said, his voice flat. "No, I won't. It's the climb. It's always the bloody climb. Even those Doras, they climbed up at us from the deck like they were on a wire. And the 262s, they just say goodbye. We can't get to them. We can't climb." The word hung in the air. Climb. It was the new metric for survival. Speed was one thing, but the ability to gain altitude, to gain energy potential, was life. The Me-262 could climb at 4,000 feet per minute, on one engine. On two, it was a rocket. The Spitfire, for all its grace, was a creature of the lower, thicker air. Desperation was setting in. The ground crews were stripping paint off the wings. They were using 150-octane fuel, which fouled the spark plugs but gave a few extra pounds of boost. They were checking every rivet, desperate to find one more knot of speed. It made no difference. The jets remained untouchable, and the losses mounted. Volkel Air Base, Hangar 4, 23rd of February 1945, 22 hours. The hangar was cold. A biting wind found its way through every gap in the canvas doors. The only light came from portable work lamps, casting long, monstrous shadows. The smell of high-octane fuel, hydraulic fluid, and wet metal was thick as a blanket. Leading aircraft man Lachlan "Lockie" McKenzie was elbow-deep in the guts of a Griffin 65 engine. It was from Wombat's aircraft, or what was left of it. The recovery team had brought the engine back on a truck. The rest was just confetti. Lockie was not an engine man, not officially. His trade was fitter to airframes. He was supposed to be patching bullet holes in aluminum skin, but the engine crews were overworked, and Lockie understood engines. He was 28, older than most of the pilots. He was a quiet, sinewy man from the Riverina in New South Wales. He hadn't grown up with planes. He'd grown up with tractors. He'd spent his youth keeping a 1920s-era McCormick Deering tractor alive with fencing wire and sheer stubbornness. He understood the relationship between fuel, air, and pressure in a way the Royal Air Force training manuals didn't. To him, an engine wasn't a collection of parts. It was a breathing thing, a system of flow. He listened to the pilots in the mess. He'd heard F.L. Anderson after he landed, frustrated and grieving. He heard that word over and over: climb. Now, he was looking at the heart of the problem. The Griffin's magnificent two-stage, two-speed supercharger. It was a masterpiece. At low altitude, it ran in low gear, moderate supercharger, or MS. Then, at a preset altitude, an aneroid barometer automatically switched it to high gear, full supercharger, or FS, forcing more thin, high-altitude air into the cylinders. The problem was, the automatic switchover happened around 14,000 feet. The jets were already above them. They needed the high gear now. He'd heard the engineers talk about it. Forcing the high gear blower at sea level? The boost pressure would be catastrophic. The fuel air charge would get so hot it would pre-ignite. It would be like a lit match in a bucket of gasoline. Detonation. It would blow the cylinder heads clean off the engine block. Lockie wiped his greasy hands on a rag and looked at another part of the engine, a separate, smaller system, the anti-detonant injection, or ADI. It was standard on the Griffin. A small tank held a 50-50 mix of distilled water and methanol. When the pilot pushed the throttle past the war emergency gate, this system would spray a fine mist of the water meths into the supercharger. The evaporating liquid would supercool the air charge, absorbing the heat of compression. This dense, cool charge would prevent detonation, allowing the engine to safely handle the extreme boost. But it was only designed to handle the normal war emergency power. A little extra oomph. Lockie stood staring at the two systems. The supercharger gearbox, the ADI water meths pump. He thought about his farm. He thought about a hot summer day, the tractor radiator boiling. He'd rigged a second water pump from a scrap truck to help it, flooding the system to keep it cool. What if? The pilots say they can't climb. They need high gear now. The engine will blow, but what if you just give it more water? What if you didn't just use the standard ADI system? What if you flooded it? What if you bypassed the automatic supercharger switch and rewired it to a manual toggle? And at the same moment, you used a much bigger pump to force 3 times the normal amount of water methanol into the charge? You'd be drowning the engine in coolant, absorbing the suicidal heat of the low-altitude high-gear boost. The engine wouldn't be running. It would be exploding, just barely under control. It would burn fuel at a terrifying rate. It would probably tear itself to pieces in 10 minutes. But, Lockie thought, his heart starting to pound. For 3 minutes? For 5? It might just climb like a rocket. Volkel Air Base outside the mess, 24th of February 1945, Urdo 7 hours. Blue Anderson was walking back from the wash block, a thin towel around his neck, his face raw from cold water and a cheap razor. He felt tired down to his bones. "Sir? F.L. Anderson?" He turned. It was Mackenzie, the ground crew chief. He was holding a grimy rag, turning it over and over in his hands. "What is it, Lockie?" Blue said, not unkindly. "Is Queenie buggered?" "No, sir, she's fine." Lockie looked nervous. He wasn't used to talking to officers. I've been thinking about the jets, about climbing." Blue stopped. "Thinking what?" "I was looking at the Griffin, sir. The supercharger." Lockie launched into a halting technical explanation. He spoke of aneroid barometers, gear ratios, and detonation. Blue, a pilot, understood the basics. "The Yanks, sir, on their P-47s. They use their water injection for low-level power, a burst of speed. We're only set up to use it high," Lockie said, gaining a bit of confidence. "We need it high, Lockie. That's where the fight is," Blue said, confused. "No, sir," Lockie said, his voice firming. "The fight starts here. We need to get high, faster than them." He finally looked Blue in the eye. "Sir, what if we could switch the high gear blower on? Right from takeoff." Blue stared at him. "It'd explode. You know that. It's not boost, Lockie. That's a bomb." "Not if we cool it," Lockie said, his words tumbling out now. "Not if we give it more water meths. Not the little spray it gets now. What if we drown it in the stuff? A bigger pump, stronger pipes. We could cool the charge even at, I reckon, plus 25 boost." Blue's mind raced. Plus 25 pounds of boost. War emergency was plus 18. Normal full power was plus 12. What Lockie was talking about was insane. It was 3,000 horsepower from an engine designed for 2,000. "And I could do it," Lockie finished, his voice quiet again. "I'd have to rewire the gear change selector, bypass the barometer, put it on a simple switch in the cockpit. And I'd need to find a better pump." Blue Anderson, who had felt nothing but despair for a week, felt a sudden electric jolt of something. It was terrifying, and it was brilliant. "Come with me," he said. Squadron Leader Davies' office was a cramped box at the end of the briefing hut. He was smoking, an ashtray overflowing on his desk. He looked at Blue, then at the grease-stained mechanic standing awkwardly at attention. "A what?" Davies said after Blue relayed the idea. "A modification, sir," Blue said. "Flight Lieutenant, you brought an LAC into my office to propose willful, unauthorized, and catastrophic sabotage on a Rolls-to-God Royce Griffin engine." Davies' voice was dangerously quiet. "Sir, Lockie started. "You'll speak when spoken to, leading aircraftman," Davies snapped. He turned back to Blue. "Do you have any idea what would happen? You're talking about overriding every safety system Rolls-Royce built. You'll turn my 40,000-pound aircraft into a Roman candle before you're 500 feet off the runway." "Lockie says the water meths can take the heat," Blue argued. "He thinks it can handle the pressure, sir. For a few minutes. That's all we need. 5 minutes of impossible climb. He thinks. Davy stood up. This isn't a bloody farm in Wagga Wagga, Mackenzie. You can't just tinker with a griffin. This is the king's property, and that's Blue's life. And my life is already forfeit, sir, Blue shot back. We all are. Wombat's dead because his plane was too slow. This is a chance. It's a risk, but it's better than floating around up there waiting to die. There was a long, heavy silence. The rain drummed on the roof. Davy stared at Lockie, who stood his ground, his gaze level. You're a fitter, Mackenzie, not an engineer. I fix things that are broke, sir, Lockie said quietly. And this is broke. Davies ran his hands over his face. He was trapped. By the rules, by the Germans, by the desperation of his men. He looked at Blue. One, plane, your plane, Queenie. If it so much as sputters, I'm grounding you for a month. And Mackenzie, so help me God, I will have you on a charge so fast your head will spin. You will do this on your own time. You will not scrounge official parts. This conversation had never happened. Yes, sir, Blue said, a grin threatening to split his face. Get out, Davies said, sitting down heavily. Both of you, just get out. Volkel Air Base, Hangar 4, Dispersal 12, 25th of February, 1945, 01. Hours they worked in the dead of night, by the low yellow light of a single caged bulb. The hangar was a cavern of shadows, the only sound the tink, tink, tink of Lockie's hammer and the hiss of the wind. Blue Anderson stood watch holding the lamp. He felt like a conspirator, which he supposed he was. Right, Lockie whispered, his voice echoing slightly in the fuselage. First part's the rewiring. That's the easy bit. Lockie was lying on his back, his torso disappearing into the access panels behind the pilot's seat. He located the bundle of electrical wires running to the supercharger's aneroid barometer switch. With a set of wire cutters, he snipped the control line. That's it? Blue asked, watching the severed wire. That's the off switch for the safety, Lockie said. He pulled a new, thicker gauge wire from his pocket. This is the on switch. He meticulously spliced the new wire into the circuit, bypassing the automatic sensor completely. He fed the wire along the cockpit wall, up to the main instrument panel. There, in a blank spot near the gyro compass, he drilled a small hole. He fitted a heavy-duty two-way toggle switch, one he'd borrowed from the cockpit of a wrecked P-47 Thunderbolt. He painted the switch a stark, bright red. That's part one, he said, wiping his hands. Now the hard part, the plumbing. The standard ADI pump was a precision-built, low-flow device. It wasn't nearly powerful enough for what Lockie had in mind. He needed pressure. He needed flow. Found this, he said, and from under a tarpaulin he produced a heavy, greasy piece of machinery. What is it? Blue asked. Hydraulic pump, Lockie said, a hint of pride in his voice. From that typhoon that belly landed last week, the one that tore its gear off. This pump is designed to move hydraulic fluid under 3,000 pounds of pressure to get the landing gear up. It'll move water meths just fine. For the next 4 hours they worked to install it. It was a nightmare of improvisation. The fittings didn't match. The mounting brackets were all wrong. Lockie, with the patience of a sculptor, fabricated a new mount from scrap aluminum. He used a hand file to rethread the brass fittings. He scavenged high-pressure fuel lines from a German truck the Army had captured and welded them into the new system, creating a new separate circuit that fed directly into the supercharger's main intake. The work was slow, cold, and painful. Blue's hands, used to the delicate movements of a throttle, were cut and clumsy as he tried to hold a wrench. Lockie's knuckles were bloody. The smell of cutting oil and aviation fuel was overpowering. You sure this'll hold, Locke? Blue asked, staring at the Rube Goldberg-esque contraption of pipes and wires. She'll hold, Lockie said. He tapped the new, oversized main pipe. Pressure's pressure, sir. Whether it's for a tractor's hydraulics or this'll push 3 gallons a minute. The engine will either love it or it'll drown. We need to fill the ADI tank. They filled the 12-gallon tank to the brim with the 50-50 water-methanol mix. At 0430, they were done. Lockie stepped back, his face a mask of grease, and nodded. She's ready for a test. Blue looked at his Spitfire. It looked the same, but under the cowling, It was no longer a thoroughbred. It was a monster. Volkel Air Base, 25 February 1945, 06:15 hours, dawn. The airfield was blanketed in a cold gray mist. The only witnesses were Blue, Lockie, and a very nervous squadron leader Davies, who stood by his jeep, arms crossed, 100 yards away. "Ground test first," Lockie instructed, standing on the wing. "Just run her up. Don't touch the switch. Just make sure the plumbing ain't leaking." Blue climbed in. The cockpit smelled the same, but the little red switch on the panel seemed to pulse with menace. He started the engine. The Griffin caught with its usual explosive cough, then settled into a low, thrumming idle. Lockie hopped down and carefully inspected the engine cowling. He gave a thumbs up. Blue taxied to the end of the runway. Davies' jeep followed. "All right, Blue," Davies' voice crackled over the radio. "Take her up to 5,000, just 5,000. Do a normal climb. Then, if you're feeling lucky, try it. But the second you hear a cough or the temps go off the clock, you shut it down. Understood?" "Understood, sir," Blue replied. His heart was a trip hammer. He took off, a standard, powerful takeoff. The Spitfire felt normal. He climbed in a wide, gentle circle over the airfield. The air was smooth. 5,000 feet, leader. All green. She feels good. Right, Lockie? Davies' voice came over the radio, directed at the mechanic beside him. "Your show." Lockie picked up the radio handset from the jeep. "Sir, F.L. Anderson. Push the throttle past the gate. To war emergency. Let it settle. Then, flick the red switch. And hold on." Blue's hand was shaking. "Here we go." He pushed the throttle lever forward, past the wire gate. The engine note deepened, the roar increasing as the propeller pitch coarsened. The ADI system kicked in. The plane was now at full standard emergency power. "Okay, engaging the Lockie lever. Now." He flipped the red switch. From the ground, the sound was terrifying. The Spitfire's engine note didn't just increase, it changed. The deep-chested Griffin roar was replaced by a high-pitched banshee scream. A shriek of tortured metal. A dense plume of white vapor, the unburnt water methanol, streamed from the exhaust stacks. In the cockpit, Blue was slammed back into his seat so hard his head cracked against the armored plate. The G-force was instantaneous, brutal. The entire airframe was vibrating with a deep, violent shudder. He wasn't flying. He was being hurled. He looked at his vertical speed indicator. The needle, which had been steady at 4,000 feet per minute, swung wildly, bounced off the 8,000 FPM pin, and pegged itself at the very top of the dial. "My God," he whispered. He looked out. The ground wasn't just below him. It was gone. Climbing, 8,000 feet, 10,000, 12,000, he yelled into the radio. He watched his altimeter. It was spinning like the second hand on a stopwatch. "Temp gauges," Davies' voice barked. "Check your bloody temps." Blue scanned the panel. The oil and coolant needles were charging into the red. "They're high. They're spiking. 15,000 feet. I'm shutting it down." He flipped the red switch off. He pulled the throttle back. The effect was just as violent. The massive thrust vanished. The plane, which had been on a ballistic trajectory, suddenly felt soft, as if it had hit aerial mud. The screaming stopped, replaced by the normal, healthy roar of the Griffin. He was at 16,000 feet. It had taken him 45 seconds. He was shaking. "Holy mother!" He spiraled down and landed, his knees weak. As he taxied back, Davies and Lockie were waiting. Lockie was the first one to the cockpit. He didn't even wait for the engine to stop. He was up on the wing, prying open the engine, cowling with a screwdriver. A blast of superheated air and the smell of burnt oil washed over him. The engine block was ticking and pinging. The exhaust manifolds were scorched a deep, iridescent blue. "She held," Lockie breathed, his face lit with a kind of holy terror. "She held." Blue pulled his helmet off. He looked at Davies, who was just staring. "Well," Blue said. Davies walked over. He looked at the scorched engine. He looked at the pilot. He looked at the mechanic. "Mackenzie," Davies said, his voice flat, "get that ADI tank refilled. and paint red roux on the nose of this thing." He looked at Blue. "Go hunt some jets." Near Osnabrück, Germany, 2nd of March 1945, 11:17 hours. The sky was a battlefield. 100 B-17 flying fortresses were clawing their way through a sky septic with flak. 453 Squadron was close escort, weaving a tight, protective web around the bombers. Blue Anderson, flying the modified Spitfire now christened Red Roux, felt the vibration in his teeth. His aircraft was heavy, loaded with a full belly tank and 12 gallons of water meths. The little red switch on his dashboard seemed to mock him. It had worked once, in a clean test. What would happen in the chaos of combat? "Bandits, hi, 1 o'clock, 2 of them." This time, Blue saw them instantly. 2 Me-262s, silver sharks against the sun, arcing down for their attack. "Blue leader to section, let them through, wait for the climb, wait for it." The jets tore through the formation, their 30mm cannons, firing slowly, thump, 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 were devastating. A B-17 at the edge of the box took hits in the wing root. It began to burn, a massive spreading fire. "They're through!" his wingman yelled. "Shoot! I see 3 shoots." "Right," Blue said, his voice cold. He watched the 2 jets. Just as before their attack complete, they bottomed out their dive and began to pull up. Noses pointed to the sky, confident in their untouchable advantage. They were 3,000 yards ahead and 2,000 feet below. Blue leader engaging. Red Roux is hot. Blue dropped his belly tank. He pushed the throttle forward, past the gate, to the stops, and he flipped the red switch. Whump. The kick was just as brutal as the first time. Red Roux leaped forward as if kicked by a giant. His wingmen, in their standard spits, were instantly left behind. "Bloody hell, Blue!" Magpie Smith's voice crackled. You're going." Blue was pinned to his seat, his eyes watering from the vibration. The noise was apocalyptic, a sound that seemed to be tearing the air in half. He was no longer flying a Spitfire, he was riding a missile. He aimed his nose just above the climbing jets. His VSI was pegged. His altimeter was a blur. In the cockpit of the lead Me-262, Oberleutnant Franz Weitgasser looked back over his shoulder, expecting to see the dots of the Spitfires receding far below. Instead, his blood froze. A single Spitfire, its nose high, its exhausts belching white fire, was gaining on him, in a climb. It wasn't just gaining. It was closing at an impossible, terrifying rate. "Was ist das? Ein Komet?" he screamed to his wingman. "What is that? A comet?" referring to the rocket-powered Me-163. It was no rocket. It was a piston-engined ghost, and it was coming for him. Weitgasser pushed his throttles, but the Jumo 004s were slow to respond. He was in a full-power climb, but the Spitfire was climbing faster. Blue watched the 262 swell in his gun sight. 1,000 yards, 800. The vibration was so bad he could barely keep the pipper steady. The engine temperature gauges were deep in the red. The smell of hot metal and ozone filled his cockpit. 3 minutes, Lockie had warned. No more. 600 yards, he grunted. The German pilot, in a panic, broke right. It was a fatal mistake. He turned out of his high-speed climb, sacrificing his energy. "Got you." Blue pulled his nose through the turn. The G-force was immense, but the thrust from the engine was so great it seemed to nail him to the sky. 400 yards, 300. He was inside the 262's turn. He depressed the cannon button. The Spitfire's 2 20mm cannons and 2 50 caliber machine guns tore loose. The sound was drowned out by the engine's scream. He saw his tracers, like bright yellow ropes, connect with the 262's port engine. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Large pieces of the jet's engine nacelle simply disintegrated. A bright orange fire bloomed, instantly replaced by a thick, greasy black smoke. The 262 faltered, nosed over, and fell away, rolling onto its back in an uncontrolled dive. Splash one jet!" Blue roared, his voice breaking. "Wombat, you bastard! That's for you!" The second 262, seeing its leader destroyed by an impossible Spitfire, didn't wait. He pushed his nose down and fled, diving at full speed. Blue pulled his throttle back and flipped the red switch off. The silence was deafening. The plane shuddered, suddenly tame. The engine was pinging, smoking, and protesting, but it was still running. The radio was dead silent for a full 10 seconds. Then Magpie's voice came on, shaking with disbelief. Christ! Christ alive, Blue! What was that? It looked like you were fired out of a bloody cannon. Blue just laughed, a high, giddy, half-hysterical laugh. That, Magpie, he panted, was the kangaroo kick. Vocal Air Base Debriefing Hut, 2nd March 1945, 14 hours. The debriefing room was electric. The atmosphere wasn't just joyful, it was stunned. Say it again, Blue, Davies said, holding an unlit cigarette. I splashed him, sir, in the climb. I climbed with him, and I caught him. Davies looked at the gun camera footage. It was shaky, distorted by the vibration, but undeniable. A Spitfire's wing, a Me-262, climbing, the Spitfire gaining, the tracers, the hits, the fire. The room erupted. Pilots were on their feet, clapping Blue on the back, all shouting at once. What's he got in that thing, Skip? I want one now. The kangaroo kick. I love it. Davies held up a hand for silence. He looked at the back of the room where LAC Mackenzie was standing, trying to be invisible. Mackenzie, get your tools. Magpie, your plane is next. Then Smith's. I want every serviceable Griffin in this squadron modified. Yesterday. Sir, the squadron's engineering officer protested. I have to file a report with Group. This is a non-standard modification. It hasn't been tested. It's a breach of... It's a bloody miracle, engineer. Davies cut him off. You file whatever report you want. Title it, How We Win. Now get out of Mackenzie's way. The news spread through the 2nd Tactical Air Force like wildfire. At first it was a rumor. An Australian Spitfire had shot down a 262 in a climb. It was dismissed as a fluke, a lucky shot, pilot exaggeration. Then, 2 days later, 453 Squadron did it again. This time, a pair of modified Spitfires, Blue and Magpie, hunted as a team. They kangaroo kicked in tandem, bracketing a 262 from 2 directions. The German pilot, faced with 2 rocket spits, panicked and dove straight into the guns of the lower section. By the end of the week, 453 Squadron had claimed 4 Me-262s. A frantic official signal arrived from Wing Command. Cease and desist all unauthorized modifications to Griffin engines pending full technical inquiry. Davies read the signal, crumpled it up, and threw it in the bin. Lockie, he called out, you've got a backlog. Lockie was now the most important man on the base. He wasn't a grease monkey anymore. He was the professor. A small dedicated team of fitters and riggers worked under him, a 24-hour chop shop turning standard spits into jet killers. They were scrounging parts from every wreck in the Netherlands, hydraulic pumps from Typhoons, fuel lines from captured German trucks, switches from downed American bombers. Each modification was unique, a testament to Lockie's bush mechanic genius. He was promoted to corporal, an extra stripe he seemed embarrassed to wear. It's not proper, he'd mutter, tuning a new pump. It's just brute force and a lot of water. But the pilots treated him like royalty. They brought him their rations of chocolate. They gave him their whiskey. He was the man who had, with a wrench and a bit of wiring, given them back their sky, somewhere over the North German plain. 18th of March, 1945. The kangaroo kick was evolving. What had started as a desperate measure was becoming a refined, if brutal, tactic. Lockie and his team had gotten better. They'd found that the main fuel pumps from the P-38 Lightning were even more robust than the Typhoon's hydraulics. They started adding a second, small, 5-gallon ADI tank behind the pilot's headrest, as the kick drank the normal 12-gallon tank dry in under 4 minutes. The pilots, in turn, were learning how to use it. You don't just climb, Blue explained in a briefing. You're not a plane anymore. You're a bullet. You aim ahead of the jet. You have to predict where he's going to be. You've got 2 minutes, maybe 3, before the engine cooks itself. You make it count. They discovered new, creative uses. Magpie, bounced by a Dora, had engaged the kick in a shallow dive. The sudden, massive acceleration let him walk away from the Focke-Wulf as if it were standing still. Another pilot, cornered by 2 FW190s, had used it to perform an impossible vertical loop, kicking at the top of the maneuver and simply disappearing, leaving the two German pilots to stare at the empty sky. The enemy, of course, was reacting. German intelligence was baffled. Their pilots' reports were frantic, describing rocket-propelled Spitfires and multi-stage superchargers. They assumed the Allies had a new secret engine. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, commanding JG-7, explicitly forbade his pilots from engaging in zoom climbs after an attack. "If you see a Spitfire," his new order read, "and it begins to accelerate in a manner inconsistent with its known capabilities, you are to disengage immediately. Do not climb. Repeat, do not climb. Use your superior level speed to run. Re-engage only from a superior altitude." The tactics of the air war over Germany shifted again. The Tu-62s, once untouchable high-altitude predators, were being forced down low. The kangaroo kick had taken away their escape route. It had leveled the playing field, not by making the Spitfire a jet, but by giving it a 5-minute window of pure, unadulterated energy. Lockheed was loaned to other squadrons. A grim-faced group captain flew him to bases in Belgium and France. He was supposed to be teaching their mechanics, but he was miserable. "They're engineers, sir," he told Blue one night. "They want blueprints. They want maths. They keep asking me about pressure tolerances and exhaust gas temperatures. I don't know. I know it works." He was a farmer in a room full of scientists. They looked at his butchery, the rewired switch, the mismatched pipes, the salvage pumps, with horror. A Rolls-Royce technical representative, a boffin in a clean white coat, flew in to inspect Red Roo. He spent an hour looking at Lockheed's work. "This," he said finally, his voice shaking with indignation, "is an abomination. You are destroying the harmonics. You're warping the cylinder heads. You are butchering Mr. Royce's finest creation." Lockheed just nodded, wiping his hands on his overalls. "But it works, eh?" Volkel Air Base, maintenance rosters, 25th of March 1945. The cost of the kangaroo kick was not measured in parts, but in hours. Lockheed's modification was, as the Rolls-Royce man had screamed, an abomination. It was tearing the engines apart. The Griffins, designed for a 200-hour life between overhauls, were coming back from kick-enabled missions completely spent. They were burning out in as few as 10 hours. Pistons were cracking from the thermal shock. Supercharger gears were being stripped. Cylinder heads were warping from the intense, water-cooled but still apocalyptic heat. 453 squadrons' serviceability rate plummeted. For every 6 aircraft that went out, only 2 would be fit to fly the next day. The ground crews were working 36-hour shifts, swapping entire engines in the driving rain. The supply chain for new Griffins was screaming. "I have a choice, sir," Davies argued with the wing commander over a crackling phone line. "I can have 12 planes in the air that can't touch the jets, or I can have 4 planes that can kill them. You tell me which one Bomber Command prefers." He won the argument, but the cost was real. The squadron was running on fumes, adrenaline, and Lockheed's sheer ingenuity. Then came the human cost. Flight Lieutenant Sparrow Sims was a new replacement pilot, fresh from an operational training unit. He was young, cocky, and desperate to prove himself. He was assigned a kicked Spitfire and told the rules. 3 minutes, no more. The gauges will go red. You ignore them at your peril. On his first jet patrol, he saw one. A lone Tu-62 returning to base. "Tally-ho! I'm on him!" Sparrow yelled, his voice high with excitement. "Sparrow, no, he's too low!" Blue shouted. "Wait for the section!" But Sparrow was gone. He engaged the kick at 10,000 feet, diving on the jet. The Tu-62 pilot saw him coming and opened his own throttles. The chase was on, a low-level, high-speed drag race over the forests of the Teutoburg. Sparrow's voice came over the radio, panting. "I'm on him. 500 yards. He's fast, but I'm faster. This kick is amazing." "Sparrow, watch your temps," Blue ordered. "How long has it been?" "Don't know. Maybe 4 minutes. Engine's running a bit rough, but I'm getting him. 300 yards. Then, oh, hell, I've got a fire. Cockpit's full of smoke." A pause, a cough. "Mayday, mayday. Engine seized. I'm bailing out. The transmission cut out." A wingman saw the smoke. "Sparrow's Spitfire. its engine frozen solid, had flicked inverted and plowed into a hillside at 500 mph. Lockie Mackenzie heard the after-action report in the maintenance hangar. He was holding a burnt, warped piston from another engine. He just stood there, staring at the ruined piece of metal in his hands. He saw Sparrow's face. Blue found him hours later, still sitting on an oil drum in the dark. "It wasn't the machine, Locke," Blue said quietly, sitting next to him. "It was the man. It was the war. You gave us a chance, that's all. What the pilot does with that chance, that's not on you." Lockie just nodded, slowly turning the ruined piston over in his grease-stained hands. I just wish I could have built it better," he whispered. Lübeck, Germany, 2nd May 1945. The war in Europe was over. It was dying in fits and starts, in pockets of suicidal resistance and fields of mass surrender. Number 453, Squadron RAF, was now based on German soil at Lübeck. The kangaroo kick had become a legend in the second TAF. The squadron's final tally was 19 Me-262s confirmed destroyed. It was the highest tally of any Spitfire squadron in the air war. They had paid a high price in burnt-out engines and stressed airframes, but they had broken the back of the jet threat in their sector. The Lockie lever was now a semi-official, though reluctantly sanctioned, field modification. A proper engineering kit was even being designed in England, with purpose-built pumps and reinforced pipes. But the war ended before it ever went into production. The squadron's fame was built on the back of Lockheed's Bush engineering. The end came with a strange, quiet suddenness. Blue Anderson flew one last patrol. He saw a lone Me-262, its landing gear down, approaching an airfield. He instinctively reached for the red switch, his blood running hot. Then he saw the airfield. It was covered in British tanks. The 262 was surrendering. He just circled, watching the most advanced aircraft in the world give itself up. The jet age was here. The piston age was over. But for 3 crucial, desperate months, a farm mechanic from the Riverina had held the future at bay with a piece of wire and a stolen pump. 2 weeks later, at a parade on the captured German airfield, Squadron Leader Davies read a citation. "For meritorious service in the field, for technical innovation and exceptional ingenuity under combat conditions, contributing directly to the Allied victory in the air." Corporal Lachlan Mackenzie, his uniform clean for the first time in memory, stepped forward. A very high-ranking air marshal pinned the British Empire Medal, BEM, to his chest. Lockie was mortified by the attention. He just wanted to get back to the hangar. Blue and the rest of the pilots carried him on their shoulders, shouting and cheering. Later that day, Blue found him by his Spitfire, Red Roo, which was slated to be scrapped. "Well, Professor," Blue said, slapping him on the back. "You're a hero." Lockie blushed. "Nah, just a fitter. I'm just glad you blokes made it home, sir. We made it home because of you, Locke. Never forget that." Lockie looked at the magnificent, scarred, oil-streaked Griffin engine. "She was a good engine," he said, patting the cowling. We asked a lot of her." Wagga Wagga, New South Wales, Australia, 1982. The heat shimmered off the corrugated iron roof of the workshop. The air smelled of dry grass, sheep dip, and welding smoke. An older man, his face a map of wrinkles, his hands permanently stained with the earth and oil of a lifetime, was hunched over the engine of a truly ancient Massey Ferguson harvester. A car pulled up, kicking up a cloud of red dust. A young university student got out, holding a notebook. "Mr. Mackenzie? Mr. Lachlan Mackenzie?" The old man straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. "That's me. What can I do for you?" "My name is, I'm a historian. From ANU. I'm researching the RAAF's number 453 squadron in Europe. I found a reference in an old operations log. It mentioned something called a kangaroo kick." Lockie Mackenzie looked at the young man. He looked at the harvester. He looked out at the vast dry paddock. "Yeah," he said, his voice a low, gravelly drawl. That was a long time ago. The records are confusing," the student pressed. "They suggest a field modification to the Griffin engine. But the performance data? Mr. Mackenzie, the data is impossible. It says your Spitfires were out climbing Me-262s. Was that true?" Lockie gave a small, dry chuckle. We had a job to do. The jets, they were a problem. Had to get the boys up high, quick. So, we fiddled with the plumbing. But how? The student asked, his pen poised. I've spoken to Rolls-Royce. Their engineers say it's a thermal impossibility. They say the engine would have melted. Lockie turned back to his harvester. He tapped the big diesel injector pump. They're good, those fellas. Smart. But they think in terms of what an engine should do. Sometimes you just gotta find out what it can do. It's just pressure and cooling. He shrugged. It was just some pipes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get this old girl running before harvest. The student, disappointed, left with no real answers. Hendon, UK. The Royal Air Force Museum, 2015. A restored Spitfire, Mk-15, hangs suspended from the ceiling, its Griffin engine silent forever. It is painted in the colors of a 453 Squadron aircraft. A small plaque beneath it describes the Spitfire's late war service. A curator is speaking to a tour group. The Griffin engine Spits were the absolute pinnacle of piston-driven design, she says. They were a match for anything, except of an evening, the German jets. But this particular Australian squadron, they had a truly remarkable, almost unbelievable run of success against the 262s. How? A tourist asks. I thought the jets were untouchable. Well, the curator says, that's the mystery. The official records are sparse. The squadron's kill ratio seems to defy physics. The pilots, in their memoirs, just called it a bit of Aussie magic. They were just exceptionally good pilots. A young historian, the same one from Australia, now older, stands at the back of the group. He has spent his life on this one, small mystery. After the tour moves on, he steps up to the railing. He looks up into the restored cockpit, his eyes scanning the instrument panel. And there, just visible behind the control column, he sees it. A single, small, non-standard toggle switch. Its surface is worn, but you can still see the flecks of faded, chipped red paint. It was a detail so small, so incorrect. The restorers had debated removing it, but ultimately left it for authenticity, assuming it was a one-off field repair. The historian looks at the switch, and he finally understands. History remembers the aces. It remembers the generals. It remembers the thrum of the engines. But it is built on the moments in the dark, on the quiet, greasy hands of men like Lockie Mackenzie, the men who, with no blueprints, no permission, and no fear of the impossible, simply found a new way to make them sing.